This is the new Razer Phone, the latest handset trying to make a name for itself with the help of some new display technology. For other phones this year, that might have meant ultra-wide screens, but with the Razer Phone, the story is all about silky smooth frame rates, thanks to its ultra-motion 120Hz screen. Will that automatically make it a win for gamers? And how does the rest of the user experience hold up? Well, I'm Stephen Shank with PhoneArena, answering those questions right now as I review the Razer Phone. In a market dominated by phones with barely there bezels and smoothly sloping curves, the boxy, conservative-looking Razer Phone is almost an anachronism. It's got a big 5.7-inch screen flanked by dual front-facing speakers, all tucked within a big metal rectangle. While this is Razer's first phone, the company acquired Robin maker Nextbit back at the start of the year, and it's impossible to ignore the design similarities between these two phones. For as large as the handset is, Razer keeps its phone usable through a few smart decisions. The volume buttons are mounted relatively low on the left side, helping with one-handed operation, and the side-mounted fingerprint scanner is much easier to reach than the scanners we've seen on other recent phablets like the Galaxy Note 8. Still, not everything's perfect here. That fingerprint scanner, for instance, still requires a physical press, while other phones would unlock with just a glancing touch. And while pretty much everyone else out there right now is making their smartphones waterproof, Razer's decided to go without that feature for its inaugural model. The real star of the show here, though, is the phone's screen, or at least certain elements of it. Using what Razer dubs ultra-motion tech, the panel's capable of refresh rates up to 120Hz, or twice as fast as your typical smartphone display. That spells for some smoothly animating UI elements, though you'll have to manually tweak things for the best results, as the phone ships set to just 90Hz mode. Even at 90Hz, the screen looks great, but you may struggle to see what's going on in bright outdoor environments. That's because the Razer Phone's screen is disappointingly dim, and one of the weakest contenders we've seen in a while. Circling back to ultra-motion, what does that tech spell for apps? Razer does deliver a nicely executed game booster mode that allows you to dial in the performance you want, specifying things like CPU speed in addition to ultra-motion frame rate, all in the interest of balancing high-end operation against power consumption. But even with everything set as high as it can go, a large number of apps are frame rate limited in software, meaning that they simply won't take advantage of a phone like the Razer that can go all the way to 120Hz. That situation may improve in time, but don't expect the Razer Phone to necessarily outperform other flagships right out of the box. With a Snapdragon 835 processor under the hood, the Razer Phone understandably operates up near the top of the currently available Android pack, a situation that's not hurt by the more than adequate presence of 8GB of RAM. Like the ultra-motion screen, simply dropping that kind of hardware on existing games won't necessarily supercharge them in the blink of an eye, but it's some nice flexibility to have all the same. Storage comes at an adequate 64GB, and you're free to expand upon that with a microSD card. The interface here isn't too special, and Razer keeps things pretty close to stock, though with the nice bonus of a Nova launcher at the forefront. The phone ships with Nougat, but an Android Oreo update is on track for early next year. You'll find a theme store for dressing up the UI a little, and in addition to those game booster controls for configuring display and performance settings, there's also Dolby Atmos software for setting up sound profiles. The software there is a little clunky though, and a lack of better preview options makes it difficult to appreciate the impact of your EQ adjustments. Speaking of sound, the Razer Phone's got a big pair of stereo speakers at the top and bottom of the phone's screen. Well, the speaker grills are big anyway, even if the driver elements inside them are much smaller. That said, they do produce some big, satisfying sound. Bass reproduction could use some work, but the stereo separation is good, as are volume levels. Unfortunately, there's no built-in headphone jack, and Razer ships its phone with a USB Type-C adapter. Like other adapters of this type, they sound very good, but that does little to offset the annoyance of having to carry one around just to use your existing headphones. And no, the Razer Phone does not come with USB earbuds of its own, though Razer would be happy to sell you a pair for an extra $80. Razer gives its smartphone a 4000 mAh battery, but don't get too excited about that big fuel tank. In our custom tests, the Razer Phone scored just under 9 hours of screen on time, or roughly the same as the iPhone X or Pixel 2 XL, though both of those have much smaller batteries. So while that's decent battery life, it also suggests that the Razer Phone is not being very efficient with its power consumption. One consequence of simply throwing a big battery at the problem is that recharge times are also on the longer side, taking over 2 hours to refill. Finally, we've got to talk about the camera, and this is easily the weakest point of the Razer experience. On paper, it sounds decent. Dual 12-megapixel cameras offering a standard and a telephoto lens, a setup we've seen work great on other flagship handsets. But then you notice it's missing things like optical stabilization, and it starts to become clear this camera isn't quite in the same league. But the real problem here is camera software, and this is nothing short of a mess. You can count all the shooting options on one hand. The interface is utterly nonsensical. Why hide the settings menu behind a hamburger menu as the single option it contains? And it's just outright missing some obvious features. The most glaring there is giving users no way to switch between the dual cameras, no toggle to jump back and forth from standard to telephoto view. Now yes, you can pinch to zoom, but there's never any indication which camera you're using, and no ability to separate a pure optical zoom from a blurry digital zoom mess. It is garbage. We might forgive a little of that if the pictures looked great, but they're only okay. Low-light shots leave a lot to be desired, and focal problems weren't uncommon. HDR can help, but taking over 4 seconds to process each shot, it's annoying to use. Video recording similarly works alright, but a lack of stabilization can result in shaky shots, and again, there just aren't enough filming options. Razer is planning an update to improve camera functionality and fix some performance, but there's no excuse for shipping a phone with this poor of a camera setup. Razer's first smartphone is very hit and miss. It's got a high frame rate screen, but we need more games actually taking advantage of that tech, and the lack of overall brightness does not help. And while performance is good, it's not significantly better than that of a lot of other Android flagships. For every plus this phone has, it feels like there's a corresponding minus, and then we have minuses, like the camera and the lack of waterproofing, for which there's no plus at all. Frankly, at $700, the Razer phone costs way too much for such an inconsistent user experience. There are some really good ideas here, but either save your money for the second-gen Razer phone, or keep your fingers crossed that those forthcoming updates completely overhaul the software experience. I'm Stephen Shank with PhoneArena. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming reviews.